Look at Acts 2:23. It says, "This Jesus delivered up according to the definite plan and foreknowledge of God, you crucified and killed by the hands of lawless men." Now, I could probably squeeze an entire sermon out of that verse alone. Think about why Peter is addressing this. This is a lot like the end of chapter 1, where he felt it necessary to mention Judas as they struggled with how to make sense of this. They struggled with how an omniscient God could pick Judas as a betrayer and one of the 12 disciples at the same time. Well, this is the same thought, just in a different example. With one Spirit-inspired sentence, Peter helps everyone understand how we are to think about the sovereignty of God and the choices of men. All right, so I'm going to settle it all today. I'm just kidding. But I do want you to look at this verse very carefully. There are 3 categories of actors against Jesus in this text, and 3 verbs to note. Delivered up, crucified, and killed. Those are the 3 verbs in that verse. Delivered up, crucified, and killed. Now, who did what? Verse 23 says, "This Jesus delivered up according to the definite plan and foreknowledge of" who? God. So God's involved. This is not a fleshly act of bad justice, good guy, wrong place, wrong time. No, God delivered Jesus up according to what? The definite plan and foreknowledge of God. This plan for Jesus to go to the cross was appointed, definite, and designated to happen in the exact way that it happened. This play was drawn up in God's playbook exactly the way that it happened. Galatians 4:4 says, in the fullness of time, exactly when it happened, on the day that it was supposed to happen. The divine foreknowledge of God had a date with the cross from eternity past. 1 Peter 1:20 says, Jesus was foreknown before the foundation of the world. John says in Revelation 13:8 that those who bow down and worship the beast do so because their names were not written before the foundation of the world in the book of life of the Lamb who was slain. So I want you to know, church, the cross was not plan B. It is plan A, because it achieves maximal glory for the Son of God. The cross is not a divine version of when life gives you lemons, make lemonade. No, God wanted lemonade before the foundation of the world, and God said lemonade is very good. And so Peter wanted the crowd to understand that their God, Yahweh, was very much in charge and over the crucifixion of Jesus, that they should not see this as a failure because it had to take place to make atonement for sin, to satisfy the wrath of God. It had to happen to make him the final Passover lamb once and for all. It was part of God's plan that Jesus be delivered up. Now here's where it gets deeper. Even though Jesus was delivered up according to the definite plan and foreknowledge of God, they were still accountable for their sins that they committed to cause it. Who killed Jesus? It was a Roman cross upon which he died, held in place by Roman nails, driven into his flesh by the hands of a Roman centurion, at the order of a Roman prefect, Pontius Pilate. But it was a group of Jewish leaders who captured him in the Garden of Gethsemane and held a late-night trial accusing him of blasphemy according to Mosaic law. It was the voices of Jewish men who refused Pilate's deal for Barabbas and who shouted out, "Crucify him." It was the Jews who put the pressure on Pilate to do their bidding. So, what does Peter say in verse 23? He says, you crucified and killed him by the hands of lawless men. You got the Romans to do your dirty work. You did it. You are accountable. Even though your sin was a thread in the tapestry of God's divine plan, you are still accountable for what you did. And Christian, I have no doubt that we live in a world where a sovereign God has divinely ordered and known even the smallest details of our days. I do not believe there is anything such as luck or chance. I don't even believe there's a thing such as free will, because only a sovereign God is truly free. But at the same time, I see in this verse the willingness of Peter to say that though God planned everything, we are still very much responsible and accountable for the decisions that we make within the framework of his plan. They couldn't lean upon, well, God planned it that way, so I'm off the hook. Nothing we do matters, right? Because God's in charge. Nope. They could not claim that. The Jews standing there on Pentecost needed to hear the simultaneous truth that their God was still sovereign and in control of the situation, but they were still accountable for shouting, "Crucify." Someone's mouth had to shout, "Crucify" on that day. Someone's hand had to drive the nail that pierced him for my transgressions. And Judas had to betray him for 30 pieces of silver. And I promise you, the greatest scholar cannot understand exactly why or how that works, and you won't until you get to heaven. But I do know that on this day, many of those people who shouted, "Crucify," were able to call upon the name of the Lord and be saved.